Okay, Stella. All right, we're live.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so I guess I want to first off, because I don't even know this. So, how did you find the website exactly?
Google.
Google. So you went to
Yeah.
Google, you typed in, and
I
um,
typed in like how to fix things, or basically something along the lines of like how to fix things with your ex, or how
mhm,
to get it back after a recent breakup, or something like
got
that.
it, got it. And was the website you popped because I guess it's just more for my own personal stroking of the ego, but the websites that popped up, did you visit any of them before mine, or was mine the first one to come up and you just kind of got sucked in from there?
I'd visited a couple of them, but all of them just kind of listed off the. Wait, can I swear?
Yeah, you can.
All right, so all of them just kind of listed off the exact same bullshit
Yeah.
that like it just makes absolutely no sense at all to do. It's like, oh, just try to do this and like
hmm
be more confident. It's like, okay, but how do I be more
Right. There's no
confident? Like,
technical details for exactly how you need to do that kind of stuff.
exactly. So it's just kind of like they list off all these things. It's like, yeah, that makes sense, but you're not telling me how to imply any of these things. And then I ended up going back because I kind of like did the click on a link, then go back, click on a link, go back.
Right, right.
And then I found yours, and it had like full in-depth articles, and I really liked that about it.
Well, I'm glad you stopped by the website, and I'm glad that you're on the podcast now. So, for those of you who are listening, Stella here, she reached out to me wanting to be featured on the podcast. And I have to say you picked the exact perfect time because I am usually booked up for interviews, but I was like lately kind of like I should probably do more of these live coaching type things. And it was like literally that day that I was kind of planning to look around for people that you had emailed me. So it was a happy coincidence. But obviously you're here because you're going through a breakup. So let's just stop my own personal ego stroking and help you out now. So
All right.
before we get started, let's just give everyone listening an idea of your situation, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So my boyfriend and I had actually been friends for about 4 years, 3 or 4 years before we started dating. And then we started dating in grade 12,
Okay.
and it was April of that year, actually on one of my friend's birthdays.
Got it.
Um, in that year, it was just kind of like almost every day we would see each other all the time. So we were still in high school, so we saw each other every single day. We also had night school classes together on Wednesday nights. So we saw each other every Wednesday night as well, and we'd hang out after school and all this stuff. And then as soon as summer hit, it just I went away for a camp because I was with cadets, and so I went away to staff this camp. And when I came back, it's just kind of like something had shifted.
Yeah. I can really hook into that because so I had my first serious type of, well, at that time, I'm much older now, but I had a serious relationship with a girl when I was a senior in high school, exactly your age.
Mm-hmm.
And she went away. So we dated for like 9 months total, but during the summer she went away on this camp. And then when she got back, things were completely different. It was like something had changed. So I definitely can relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to that, but obviously you're not broken up with him yet, right? At this point?
No. No, not yet. At that point, like over the summer, a lot had happened. We weren't able to talk that much because for me, it was a cadet camp. So we weren't really allowed to be on our cell phones all that much, and I didn't have much access to internet.
Mhm.
So it was just kind of a summer where I sent him a couple of letters, and we talked a little bit by texting of like each night. We'd say good night, we'd say good morning in the morning, but it wasn't really that much contact. And then after the summer, and he came back, and like, no, sorry, I came back home. And he just seemed different. Like he just seemed to not want to be as close to me. Whereas when we were in grade 12, he was always the one initiating contact, and he was always the one asking me to do things. And then after that, it was always me, doing things. And I started trying a lot harder to keep the relationship going. And we actually lasted all the way through first year of university and college. And he broke up with me the summer after our first year.
So you were
So
together for 2 years total.
for a year and a half approximately.
Okay. All right.
So we broke up in August of like just the summer that just passed. So it was August 21st. And that's where things started getting really complicated and messy. There was a lot of things that kind of led up to that breakup. Like my ex like the ex from before him had started contacting me again and asking me to be friends with benefits with him, and basically asking me to cheat on my boyfriend and help him cheat on his girlfriend at that time. And it just got really complicated. And I would tell my boyfriend about that because I wanted to be as open with him as possible. And he just seemed to just get really angry, and he didn't like the fact that this guy was coming back in my life, which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But that kind of started to create a rift because of the fact that these things were happening. And then one of that guy's ex-girlfriends ended up contacting me, and she made a whole YouTube video about this guy and how horrible he was. And I was like, okay, yeah, you can use my name in this video. I don't care. Because he's a cheat and he's a liar and all that stuff. So she just decided to make a video about it. And then I ended up talking to my ex about it, and he just kind of turned it into like a race issue. I don't understand why against him, because he's my ex is Asian, and the guy before that, who's like a complete asshole, is white. And he's just like, why is this guy who's like a complete asshole get all the girls and I got like nobody and I'm like the nicest guy ever? I'm like, dude, you're just completely disregarding my emotions about this thing and talking about yourself.
Well, also he still has you at this point, right?
Yeah, and I was like, okay, that kind of made me kind of take a step back. And at this point, my relationship before that had actually been a little bit of an emotionally abusive one. So I'm just wasn't used to just talking back and standing up for myself. I'd just be like, okay, you don't like talking about this topic, so I just won't talk about it. And that ended up playing into a lot of things in our relationship where I found out that he didn't like talking about something, so I would stop talking about it. But then it ended up building up inside of me because I could never express my true emotions towards him about it. And then it got to this point in the relationship where I actually started to express things, but I was feeling very insecure because he was like, instead of hanging out with me, would hang out with his friends, and I just felt him pulling away from me. So it's that classic I cling on and he pulls away type thing.
Yeah. It's sort of the push-pull type thing there. You're trying to pull him in, he's trying to push you away. So it's like sort of the more you pull him in, the more he's just trying to get away.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you guys know, but the legal drinking age here in Canada is 19.
21 here, but yeah.
Yeah. So there had actually been a couple of incidents where we had been at parties, and I was really upset about things, so I ended up drinking a little bit too much, and then I'd end up exploding on him. All these things that I'd been keeping away from him, I'd end up exploding on him, and instead of trying to deal with any of it, he'd just run away from the situation. He wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't want to fix things, even when like we were both sober. And so it just kind of became really complicated in that sense, and it got too much for him. And I guess at that point in the relationship, it was really unhealthy. And so he ended up leaving in August. And so it was kind of like a really messy thing that happened. It was at this sleepover party that was at one of my friends' houses, and we just kind of went down to the basement to talk. And I have anxiety, so I just kind of I knew what was happening, so I started having an anxiety attack right there in the basement. And he didn't know how to deal with it, and I think that kind of played into the fact of him like just reinforcing his idea of not wanting to be with me because like I was freaking out like that. And then we didn't talk after that. It was like 2 days later is when I found your website.
Okay.
So I started implementing the 30-day no contact rule, and then I just didn't talk to him for, I think it was about 20 days. But because of the fact that we've been friends for so long, there was these mutual events that we got invited to. And one of these events, we were both there. And when we were both there, he started flirting with me and basically like looking at me as if he wanted to kiss me, but he was restraining himself. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just try to not escalate this situation. But then by the end of the night, he ended up like kissing me and saying, oh, I miss you so much. And that's when he asked for the open relationship.
An open relationship. So was he dating other people at this point when he's asking for an open relationship?
No, he hadn't dated anyone. I'd gone on a date with somebody, and we were both on Tinder at this point.
Okay.
But he hadn't actually gone on a date with anyone. He even like showed me his Tinder app. He had no matches except for me because he found me on Tinder like the day before.
Your ex had no matches on Tinder?
Yeah, he had none. And I had like
none.
30.
Okay. That's okay.
But yeah, it was
classic grass is greener syndrome, you know, except Tinder almost speeds it up. Like it's like he's thinking, oh, I can do better than her, and then all of a sudden he gets no matches on Tinder, and it's sort of like, wait, what did I just do? So
Exactly. And then he actually, during that get together, he knew the password to my phone because I didn't change it. So he got into my phone and he deleted my Tinder because he got jealous.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You better change that password from going forward. I hope you have at least.
Yeah, I have. I've changed it. But like he deleted my Tinder and then he went onto his phone and deleted his. And then that's when he kissed me. He's like, "Oh, I miss you so much." And then he like went and talked to my sister. And then he came and he got me. He was talking to both me and my sister. He's like, "What would you think of like an open relationship between me and between me and my sister and him?" So it was like a 3-way one. I was like, "This is strange."
Yeah. Let's stop right here. So, your sister, your biological sister.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if he has, this is going to sound really weird, but some weird fetish?
That's kind of like what I was questioning too. I don't really know.
Like, I guess we can talk private. I don't know what the rules are. Since I'm posting, this to iTunes, I don't know if I can, like, talk too much about, like, porn, but there's some weird porn fetishes out there where maybe... I don't know what his circumstance is, but that's a very strange thing to ask, and it's an immediate red flag.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. But at the time, I was just like, I was desperate, and I was just in this
it's
emotional
understandable.
state.
You're going through the breakup, and I've stated multiple times, it's essentially like you're going through a withdrawal period where you're addicted to cocaine. You're going through withdrawal. It's the same exact type of physical thing that's happening to you. So it's understandable why you're desperate to agree to something like this. But let's ask the next question. So your sister, was she aware of this?
Yes, that's why he had pulled her aside and was talking to her separately before that. And then he pulled me into the conversation. It's like, what would you think of this? And at first I was very reluctant. I told him, like, because we'd jokingly around had said things like that before, but I guess like he's like, "Oh, you'd said it before." I'm like, I wasn't serious.
I'm definitely thinking he's got some weird fetish for sure.
Yeah, but another thing is he's a little bit of a people pleaser, and he knew that my sister liked him.
Okay. Well, I still think
it's just strange.
It's so far out of during your relationship with him. Did this? So you mentioned it came up a couple times, but it was sort of a joking type of thing.
Yes. Both my sister and him are very flirtatious people, so they would always kind of like jokingly flirt with each other.
Well, it's interesting. They've done studies specifically on flirting, like when men and women flirt, how women take it is completely different how men take it. So men take it when a woman's flirting with them. So sometimes when women flirt, they're not actually flirting. They're just being themselves. Men can take it like a step further. I'm wondering if that's what's happening here, and it sparked maybe the fetish was already there. It sparked the idea, and it just sort of, he ran with it. Did your sister, she didn't agree to this, obviously, because I know you broke up soon thereafter.
Yeah, we kind of tried that for, like, it lasted not even 2 weeks before my sister she saw how, like, actually upset I was. And then she also was unhappy.
So he wants to date. He wants to date you and your sister at the same time.
Yeah, and the way that he ended up explaining it to me, there's this anime called ReZero. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm nerdy. I've never heard of that one, but I definitely know anime. So
okay, yeah. So ReZero is a recent one. It's fairly new, and we're all kind of anime watchers. And so we were all watching this anime, and in it, he ended up turning to me once when we were hanging out, and he looked at me. He's like, "You want to know what you and I are? Amanda is Rem, and you are Amelia." And in this anime, Amelia is like the main girl that the main character, he like absolutely loves her, and he does everything for her, and like he keeps turning back time to save her life. And Rem is a girl that he just wants by his side to help him with the tasks. It's like someone that he likes a little bit more than a friend, but he doesn't love them. And that's how he explained it to me, and I was like, oh, okay. It's kind of strange, but
yeah, I mean, it's a definite red flag. So let's continue the story. So I think this kernel of knowledge will come back to it later. So
yeah,
obviously this open relationship didn't last.
No, it didn't last because since I was unhappy with it, my sister could sense that I was unhappy with it, and she's like, okay, I can't do this. So she ended up saying like, no, that's it. And then he said that like he didn't want it either after that. So basically, I'm like, well, what if she's out, could we still try? And he's just like, I don't know if I'm ready for a serious relationship right now. And I'm like,
okay, so already, all right. And is that where we are right now?
no, not quite. And then we kind of stopped talking again until October 9th, which is Canadian Thanksgiving, or just before Canadian Thanksgiving. And we had this group of guys, which is our mutual friends. It's my sister's friends and two of my high school friends and then their friends. And they all came over, and he was one of them. And it's basically like the same thing again. Like he sat right behind me when I was sitting on the floor playing Risk, and he's like playing with my hair, and then he started typing on my phone. And he's just like, "Oh, my family wanted you to come over for Thanksgiving. I hadn't told them that we broke up." And I was like, "Dude, it's been like 2 months, and you never told them. What?" And then he's just going through this whole thing. He's like, "Oh, I miss you so much." And then he's like, "Can we talk privately?" So we both went upstairs because we were in the basement. We went upstairs to talk. And he said that I love you and I miss you so much. I don't know if I can change, but all I know is I don't want to just not try anymore. And then I told him, is like, well, I need you to, like, I can't just say yes. I need you to prove that you're not just going to change your mind and leave again. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he tried for like 3 days. And then it went back to me trying to initiate everything again. And then he like officially ended that whole thing on November 3rd. And we haven't really talked since. Like, we've seen each other in person a few times because of these group get-togethers, but we haven't seen each other one-on-one, and we haven't talked online at all. And then my sister had logged in on Facebook onto my computer, and she had left it logged in, and that's how I found out that she was sabotaging it, because she ended up telling him that I was going to be contacting people, and like I was looking things up and all these things. I'm like, why are you telling him all this? But I haven't confronted her because she doesn't know I saw it.
Got it. Wow, that's quite a tale you tell.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
Well, not as complicated as that. I imagine for you it's very complicated. There's a lot of emotions, but let's nail down the most important part. What is your goal here? It's always important to have a goal, and I find so many people, they enter into this just with the general goal of, I want to get him back, but I'm asking you to think beyond that. So do you want to get him back? And if so, what kind of relationship do you want? Are you looking for marriage, or are you just looking for a nice, clean, healthy relationship that could someday lead to marriage? Is this the kind of guy for you to do that? And I think it's important also, you're 19 years old, so you probably don't want marriage right away, and that's completely okay. But let's just define a goal here so we can kind of create steps to get to it.
Yeah, so my goal would be that I want to get him back and have like a clean relationship, a healthy one, unlike the unhealthy one that we had before. So that it might eventually lead to marriage, might not. Like, I just want to kind of give it another chance, because I've actually, even though I am young, I've actually been in a few, like 2 other relatively serious relationships. Whereas for him, I was like his first serious relationship. So I think that kind of plays a really big factor into it as well.
He's a little bit more inexperienced, and
yes,
oftentimes your first relationship doesn't work out because you're kind of go crazy with all the emotions going on, and you're jealous easily.
I wasn't his first relationship, but I was his first serious one.
Okay.
Like, he had a couple of girlfriends before me, but none of them were very serious at all.
Now, I'm assuming you're talking about intimate. So, was he a virgin when he first met you?
Yes.
Okay, so and I'm assuming, unless, were you a virgin when you first met him?
When we first started dating, no. Okay. I wasn't.
So I'm assuming both of you did at one point sleep together during this relationship.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's important to know too, because I think a lot of the reasoning, he strikes me as kind of a guy who's wanting his, it's really interesting about your sister, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that the open relationship is an important thing to look at, because it's an immediate red flag. And he definitely wants, he kept coming back to you because he wants to continue sleeping with you, but he also wants to sleep with other people. And it's probably a classic thing because he's young and he really doesn't know what he wants out of his life. And it's not his fault. I think women honestly do mature a little bit faster than men do. It's clear that you have sort of an indication of what you want out of getting him back. You're not necessarily asking for marriage, whereas I've definitely worked with people who it's immediately they want their ex back and they want to get married to them. They're at that age. Whereas you just know you want a strong, healthy relationship. Am I right so far here?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Now, the problem with this is, though, it takes two to tango, right? So it's not enough for you just to want the strong, healthy relationship. He also has to want a strong, healthy relationship. And you seem like you've read the advice and you've done the no contact rule, but maybe you've made a few errors along the way. And I think the biggest error you made was even entertaining the open relationship, because now going forward, he is going to know that that is something you're willing to do. And it's going to give him leverage, and it's going to it's going to give you more headwind, and he's going to think he has leverage when let's say you get him back. Mm-hmm. It opens the risk of him potentially cheating on you, and it opens the risk of you not having that strong and healthy relationship, because he's going to think, well, you were kind of okay with the open relationship with your sister of all people. And I'm not saying you did anything bad. I completely understand why you did it. But oh man, this guy.
He is an interesting person. It's very hard to crack his case. It's very hard to understand what he's actually thinking at any given time, because he's actually quite mysterious and hidden about those kinds of things.
It's simple. Look at his actions. That will tell you everything about what he's thinking, because someone's not going to do something unless they think it first. And no matter how many thoughts that come into his head, the actual actions he takes is a clear indication towards what he wants, right? Mm-hmm. So what actions has he taken positively so far for getting you back? Well, he has definitely tried to get you back multiple times. Those are actions. He's kissed you, but at the same time, he's also taken really bad actions, like the open relationship with your sister and just kind of the weird jealousy, breaking into your phone type things. So honestly, when I look at your situation, I don't think you'll have a hard time with getting him back. But I'm looking even beyond that. I'm looking beyond if you can have a happy relationship with this guy, or if he needs to do some maturing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. I think a big issue is that he has almost no direction with his life right now.
Yeah.
Like, he was in school for police foundations, but he doesn't like the program, and so he's been failing the classes because he has no interest in them. And he just seems to be the kind of person that doesn't want to put much effort into things, which is, I guess, the biggest issue, is that right now he just doesn't have ambition. And he keeps saying that he has been feeling depressed, and that just recently, like, he doesn't see a direction in his life. He's not very happy. And he's been telling my sister this. He told me this before we broke up and things like that. It's like, I kind of understand that, because I've been in a depressive state before, but you have to do something to try and get yourself out of that. And the best way to do that is to set many goals and achieve those goals. Right. But he hasn't been doing that. Instead, he kind of hides away in video games and anime and all those kinds of typical things that people in this generation do.
Yeah. And I'm also kind of wondering, too, if he's so he told you that he's kind of getting a little depressed. He doesn't have a direction with his life. And he's telling your sister that. And he's not making any meaningful changes to try to achieve things that maybe achieve a direction or do things that he wants with his life. But he's telling you this because he knows you'll make him feel better. He knows your sister will make him feel better. So I'm wondering if he's almost using you in a way to try to, because he knows you're a caring person and you'll make him feel better. You'll boost his ego. And don't put it past any man to do that. Seriously. Yeah. Even me, I always want ego boost from my wife. Every man wants ego boost from women. That's like every man's dream, girl. Especially I can definitely relate with the nerdy anime stuff. I can go toe-to-toe with most people in anime. I mean, I've watched One Piece. I've watched Naruto. I own all of Naruto. I own One Piece. I own Bleach. I own all of these nerdy anime manga stuff.
Yeah.
And growing up as a kid, all I wanted was a girl to like me. And I think a lot of men out there feel the exact same way. And he obviously has you, and you're a strong relationship for him, and you've made him feel good. But the open relationship completely throws me. And I think the part that, it's not that it throws me. I've heard open relationships before, but with the sister. With your own sister. That's why I'm thinking he's got some weird fetish, you know?
It's a possibility. Because I know with watching anime, he actually does also read, like, hentai and watch hentai-esque things.
Okay.
And that's kind of a theme in a lot of those. Or there's, like, a lot of strange themes in those. So.
Well, you know, you also mentioned he's Asian. So, I mean, that's kind of where that comes from, the manga and the anime. It's sort of Japanese and yeah, I mean, it could definitely be something like that. But I think the question you need to ask yourself, and we'll get into the specific details of what I think you can do to increase your chances. I think the question you need to ask yourself is he the right person for a strong, healthy relationship? And I'm not trying to deter you from trying to get him back at all. I know better than that by now. A lot of people I've tried to deter it doesn't matter. But I am just saying I'm trying to look out for your well-being.
Yeah. I'm actually open to just kind of moving on, but I do want to try exhaust my options first.
Yeah, I completely agree. My whole theory on it is do everything you can, especially if you've resided yourself to trying to get him back. Do everything you possibly can so you can go to bed at night knowing that you did everything, and even if it failed, you can sleep happy knowing that. And I'm also glad that you say you're also trying or willing to maybe get over him, because that's kind of the secret sauce that makes this work. The women who are willing to get over their exes end up doing a lot better at getting their exes back. It's some weird vibe that they give off, and I'm not even sure I can explain it. I don't think there's any kind of psychologists that have done any research on it, but I can tell you from the results I've seen, and when we get off the air, I'll share my screen with you so you can actually see all the testimonials I've had, and there's hundreds.
Okay.
It's really weird. The one common denominator is these are strong women who have clearly drawn a line, and they're willing to get over their exes. And for some reason, men find it wildly attractive. And I'm glad that you also brought up the fact that, hey, you got back together a couple of times, but it's really interesting that you were sort of like, hey, you need to prove it to me. And so many women are just willing to take their exes back completely, but you just sort of made him prove himself, and it obviously didn't work out if after 3 days he put in work, but then it kind of got back to where you're doing all the work.
Yeah, and that's what I think my biggest drawback was, the fact that I let him do that.
Yeah.
And then when I called him out on it, that's when he ended up saying, I think we're just a high school relationship. This reminds me of a situation with my friend. I'm like, well, I actually know a lot of people that are high school relationships that are still together. Like my parents, for one, my friends' parents. Like I actually know a lot of people that even from our friends in high school are still together with their high school sweetheart 3 years later. So it's like your excuse or your reason doesn't really make much sense to me. Like you need to give me more depth to that.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I can give you tips to make this guy, you can wrap him around your finger essentially. And to me, he seems almost like a weak personality for that. Like if he's so desperate for attention, and it's clear if he went on Tinder and didn't have any matches and you have 30, it's clear to him, his perception of it is that women don't find him attractive. And you're an attractive girl who finds him attractive. So it kind of gives you some weird power over him. But, you know, part of the problem is change. It can happen over a short term, but what you're looking for is long-term change. And that's really difficult to do. He needs maybe some maturing and maybe a direction in his life and sort of kind of needs a kick in the butt to get going on it.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was thinking. A lot of people, before they actually decide to do anything to help themselves, they kind of need to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I think he's getting pretty close to that point because I actually heard after we had broken up, and we weren't talking, but he ended up talking to my sister, and my sister told me this. He had actually gone out drinking by himself, and he got drunk, and then he got into an argument with one of his friends, and he's just been kind of distancing himself from everyone. And even like right now, his Skype status thing says loner life is good, I guess. And just like the only time he talks to people really is sometimes he'll talk to people one-on-one. He talks to my sister quite a bit, and then he talks to this one guy named Devin quite a bit. But other than that, he's just kind of like doesn't talk to many people unless it's in these group chats that we have.
Got it.
So.
Yeah, what a world we live in. I remember when I was growing up, there was no such thing as like text messaging. I still had flip phones back when I was growing up. In high school, I literally had a flip phone. So
I had my first phone was a flip phone. I'd actually learned how to type on it without looking at it at all.
Did you have the T9 Word with the flip phone where it was like this special thing that filled in the word for you? I became a master at this thing.
No, mine was like you had to press each button until you got
brutal.
The letter.
Yeah,
I became a master at that. I could text without looking at my screen at all. I could be having like full eye contact with another person I'm talking to and send a complete sentence to another person on text message, and it'll be perfectly accurate.
That's crazy.
I can't do it anymore, but I was able to.
All right, so let's just I'm just giving you kind of the warning. There is red flags that it's going to be difficult for him to change. He might need to hit rock bottom, but the good news is I think you have definitely a good chance of getting him back because you've already done it before. And I think the thing you should focus on here is not just getting him back, but getting him back and being kind of stern and strong. Don't make him jump through the hoops. You don't jump through any hoops for him at all.
Yeah. I think that was one of my biggest fallbacks before. I recognize this now that I was very insecure. Because actually at the time frame that we started dating, the beginning foundation was that he was helping me get over my last breakup. And so I was in a very like vulnerable position. But when we were hanging out, I was always like very happy and energetic, but then I still had like these underlying insecurities that I never actually got to work through. And now that like it's been over 2 years since that breakup, I was able to work through them, but I was never able to like rely on him fully while working through those, because if I ever brought it up, he'd get upset.
Got it. Well, it's a classic reaction too that he's having. It's his first relationship, and he can't even sit there and imagine some other guy with you. He gets extremely jealous, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had fights or screaming matches over this too, because I have actually done the exact same thing when I was his age.
Yeah, there were times where he'd just get really bothered by it, and the person that kind of, I guess, escalate the fight would normally be me, because he'd say something and I'd be like, well, why'd you say that? And then he wouldn't want to tell me why he said it, so I'd keep pushing until he told me why he said it.
Right.
So it's just like these things where he's always quite secretive, so I'd always try and like push at it so that he wouldn't be as secretive. But yeah, it tends to not work too well in my favor when I did that.
Well, just with his personality too. Mm-hmm. So he's probably the kind of personality that keeps it inside, and that is one of the most difficult personalities to even date, because so much of dating relies on communication and talking things out and having these difficult conversations that many people don't want to have. And when you have a difficult conversation, and I'll give you an example of a difficult conversation. Your ex-boyfriend, he was contacting you and trying to get you to sleep with him, right?
Yes.
And you knew very, very intuitively and very smartly, you knew, I have to tell my current boyfriend about this because I want to be open and I want him to trust me. So, and I would think the same thing, because in the end, opening up and telling your significant other something this scary, because it's kind of scary as a man to know that your woman's being hit on by her ex and the ex is trying to get her to sleep with him. But you're like I would think the same thing. Like, by telling him this, it's a way for you to bond and build trust in your relationship. But he doesn't take it that way. He probably got extremely jealous and withdrawn and didn't want to talk. Am I right in assuming this?
Yeah. He ends up kind of closing himself off or completely changing the topic. Like he turned it into a race issue.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like having difficult conversations, and I think part of that is because of his past. Like, he was severely bullied during elementary and middle school, and so that kind of made him become like a withdrawn personality.
Yeah.
And I was actually one of the first people he ever told about like some childhood trauma that had happened in his life. Now he's told quite a few people because I kind of like encouraged him to talk about it. But like, I was the first person he told about some childhood abuse that had happened to him when he was a kid. So it's like I was one of the first people he ever started opening up to, and then suddenly he started opening up to a couple of other people here and there, and it just, I don't know, it's just kind of like odd because there's sometimes where he'll start saying something, and then as soon as you start questioning it, he'll shut down again. So he gives you like this little glimpse into his into his house, and then suddenly he just like patches up that hole again. It's like, no, you're not allowed to see.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up because it just made me think of something. Someone who acts that way often has something to hide too, or they're lying. So, and I'm not accusing him of being a liar, but if he's the type of person who reads anime all day, reads anime. I can't even talk. Watches anime, reads manga, and he's kind of got a creative mind. And almost, I mean, manga and anime, the best ones are dramatic, right?
Yeah.
Part of the best part of it is it's dramatic, and the plot is good, and the storyline is good. And sometimes, the only way that can happen is if there's conflict. And sometimes a human being gets addicted to that conflict, and they want to create it for themselves in their own relationship. Oftentimes people call this drama. So it could be a possible explanation of why he gets withdrawn is he's simply lying about childhood trauma, unless you think for sure that this is a fact. It's just a perspective. I'm not trying to point out. I'm just trying to get you to look at things a little bit differently too, because the open relationship thing really struck me as strange, and it's almost like him creating conflict or him creating drama.
That's kind of, I don't know, he doesn't like things being boring, so that could be a possibility, but I'm not sure. Like, sometimes I thought it was kind of strange because I have met his family, but I also know that family members, they act different when they're in front of public, when they're when they're alone. But I've met his family, and they're very sweet people, and they love me, and they're like always talking to me about things. And I actually started learning Mandarin to be able to like speak to his parents better, because they can speak English well, but they speak Mandarin more.
Right.
So I'm taking Mandarin in school, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll help you with that. And then he like breaks up with me right before the school semester starts. Like, oh, all right.
Well, all I'm saying is just going forward, just realize he's not a human. Every human being has their flaws. He's definitely not perfect.
Oh, definitely.
But put him through a gauntlet. Seriously, put your past relationship or what you think your future relationship could be under a microscope. So the worst thing you can do is waste your time on someone who maybe you'll come to the realization that is not the best match for you. But let's kind of shift gears and talk about what you can do to get him back, since that's kind of why you're here. So where are we at right now in this very moment? You said you were doing the no contact rule. What day are we in?
Oh, I'm not even sure which day. I wanted to kind of wait to get your opinion on things before I actually kind of like went forward. So we haven't talked online or in text message at all since November 9th. So it's been well over a month. But we've seen each other in person a few times. And apparently those in-person contacts, he'd been kind of misreading some things that I do. I'm a person, I Snapchat my friends quite a bit. I have some friends that live in like the States and things like that, and I can't text them because we don't have that kind of plan. Right. So we Snapchat instead. And we'd been to a couple of parties where I'm like Snapchatting, and apparently he thought I was taking pictures of him when I was taking a selfie, just because like I happened to be like facing in that direction or something, and I have my phone in front of me. So he thought I was taking pictures of him. So he thought I was being very stalkerish, and he actually told my sister to check my phone to see how many pictures I had of him. I'm like, I have like 2.
Very insecure individual. It's so interesting.
Yeah, he is. And it's strange because he comes off as so confident. But I think once you get behind that confidence, he's actually quite insecure with himself, which is probably where that depression comes in, because of the fact that he's quite insecure, but he won't show that to anyone. He's so scared to seem weak that he puts up this wall and doesn't let anyone see that weakness. And so it's very complicated to try and like make him just actually show you who he is, and actually like to just relax and not be so uptight and so like worried all the time. But yeah, it's interesting. So we haven't talked really since then, but we saw each other a few times. Like his birthday was November 27th, and there was a big group get together. And if I didn't go to the get together, my sister would have like questioned me. So I kind of had to go, because otherwise I would end up with a conflict with my sister.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of like the same thing with a lot of these group get-togethers, because it's always the same people, because they're all the people that still are here in Mississauga, whereas everyone else has kind of like left to different cities for school. And
so you're just at this point right now where you're sort of in limbo land. You don't really have a game plan?
Yeah, I'm kind of in like this limbo land, because I want to contact him, but then it was only just this weekend that I found out that my sister's been sabotaging what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And in that conversation that I ended up seeing, he was saying that he feels as though I'm being like so creepy stalkerish, and he ended up bringing up like it's something that happened on the day that we broke up, and that was that he left the party that we were at, even though like he was supposed to stay overnight, and I kind of like followed him, because I was crazy out of my mind at this moment. I kind of followed him like, where are you going type thing. Okay. Apparently he was like so scared that he went over to his friend's house, and like, okay, whatever.
Well, it seems to me a lot of drama gets created from his side. Yeah. And I think there's a rational explanation for everything you're doing. But he seems to blow it up and make it bigger. I can understand that if you have a creative mind and that's what kind of strokes your mind, makes sense to do that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Let's put together a plan. So you want to get him back, and yes. I think getting him back honestly will be the easy part. I'm not going to guarantee you can get him back, because obviously your ex-boyfriend is kind of a interesting character, we'll say. So yeah. I can't like figure out exactly what's going on in his head 100% for you, but I can say, from what I'm looking at, it looks like you have a decent shot, especially since you're dealing with an individual who maybe doesn't have the most confidence in the world, and that's horrible for me to say, but it does make him a little easier for you to get him back. I think the hard part for you, though, is going to be getting that healthy relationship, because getting him back hasn't been the problem for you.
No, it's that getting him to actually put effort in.
Yes, that's the hard part. Now, let's stop and take a look at what makes human beings commit. Let's look at facts, psychological facts. So if you've been listening to my podcast, you probably have heard me cite the interdependence theory.
Yes. All
right. So it's investment, alternatives, and satisfaction. Yeah. So let's pick it apart here. Clearly alternatives. He's thinking he has other alternatives. And then, of course, he realizes he doesn't on Tinder, and that's why he comes back to you.
He's actually back on Tinder, and he was getting my sister to help him pick up pictures.
Okay. But I think your sister is the alternative he's interested in.
I think that might be it as well. Either that or this one friend that we have named Hannah, who he's quite close to as well.
Okay. Well, you seem like a very trusting person, because he's the one who has a problem with you talking to other men. And he's the one that's talking to all these other girls.
I had a bit of an issue with it, and I did bring it up to him just because there was at some points that he was being quite flirtatious, and I called him out on it. But other than that, I was fine with it. I'm like, okay, yeah, you can have female friends. I don't really care. They're your friends. But if I brought up some guys, I could kind of see it. He'd kind of like get that little bit of a tense jaw, but he wouldn't say anything about it.
Got it.
And like the only guy friends that he was like completely okay with me being around were the ones that were gay or taken.
Okay. All right. Well, he's clearly thinking he has other alternatives that had to play a role in the breakup. Mm-hmm. And it would make sense, too, if you dated in high school and he's first getting into college, he's sort of finding himself, so to speak, and he doesn't want to get tied down. So he's clearly thinking he has other alternatives. Let's go with the satisfaction now. So I think he was pretty satisfied with your relationship from what I'm hearing, but I think the pull from the alternatives and also the investment, he's not investing a lot of time into the relationship, which is something you've cited. I think those were stronger for him.
Yeah, I do think that the satisfaction might have also been, in his mind, a little bit depleted because of the fact that he wasn't putting much investment in. So I'd end up calling him out on that, and that might kind of bring the satisfaction a bit down in his mind.
He's looking back at the relationship, just remembering all of the bad stuff as opposed to the good stuff.
Yeah, that's what's currently happening. He ended up saying that, he told my sister again, that he kind of, after graduation, the relationship seemed more like a chore. But during that relationship time frame, he seemed happy except for the last couple of months. So I think that he's just kind of taking those last couple of months and he's looking at it with like this tinted view of the entire relationship based on the last couple of months.
Okay. All right. So it looks like you have a little bit of work to do, but half the problem, honestly, that's not half the problem. The problem is him. Because to me, it seems like everything you've done has seemed very rational, and you weren't starting drama for nothing. You're calling him out when you're seeing a problem, right?
Yeah.
So he's the one that has these issues where he's flirting with other girls.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, your sister, you were talking, I just realized something. Has your sister always been pretty careful with Facebook?
No, not really. We both know each other's passwords. Neither of us are overly secretive with each other. To each other, we normally tell each other like everything. So I don't know why recently it's just become like she's just recently become secretive. So I think that she still likes him, even though she claims that she doesn't.
I would say that's an accurate assessment, but I would also say she's not dumb. She's a human being. If she's anything like you, she's smart. She wanted you to see those messages between him and her.
It's a possibility, or it might have just been that she forgot, because there's been often times that she's forgotten to just sign out of Facebook on my computer. She doesn't think of it.
That's true, but why wouldn't she erase the messages if she didn't really want you to see them?
I guess it's a good point. She's never actually erased messages off Facebook. She still has messages from like years ago on there. Yeah. So I just think she doesn't think that I'm going to read her messages or something like that. And I just ended up seeing this part of the conversation, and it kind of piqued my interest because they were talking about me. So I probably was in the wrong in reading it. But at the same time,
I think it's an interesting piece of information to have going forward. I mean, I can tell you, hey, do the no contact rule, text him the right way. But honestly, I don't think you're going to have any issues with that. I think the issue is when you get him back. If you get him back, I can't guarantee it, but let's say you get him back. Your goal is to have a strong and healthy relationship. How can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's difficult. I'm not going to lie. Your sister is kind of a wrench thrown in that was unexpected, because you could potentially, so women will fight over, sisters especially will fight over that. This could be a damaging aspect to your relationship with your sister.
Yes.
So
that's kind of what I was worried about too. That's why I haven't brought it up to her.
Yeah, and it could be one of those type of deals too where you'll be forced to pick and choose. Mm-hmm. And if you want my 2 cents, I say you choose your sister. And I'm not, because she's blood, right? She's
family will be there forever.
Right. So. And from what I'm gathering, you can get this guy back, but he might not be the one for you in the end. And I know that may be hard to hear from someone like me. And I've heard women just kind of tell me to F off after I tell them this. But more often than not, I'm right. And this guy, right now in his life, I don't think getting him back is the issue. I think he's just not.
I think he's not ready.
Yeah.
So.
You can prime him to be ready. You can drop hints. You can stay in his life. But I want what's best for you. So what you want is a happy, healthy relationship. You want it with this guy. And I guess let's move towards getting him back. So yeah, you're doing the no contact rule. Great. I think it's a strong play with him. I think jealousy will work with him really well from everything I've heard. So you going out on dates with other guys. So the interesting part about your sister is you have the ultimate spy or the ultimate mole. You can use her to your advantage, because if she has a crush on him, then she will report things to him that will hurt. Well, she will think hurt your chances. So
such as me going out on a date with somebody else.
Such as you going, and honestly, that will have a positive effect towards you getting him back, because men want what they can't have, and all of a sudden, he sees
I've actually experienced that before with my ex before this one. Whenever we spoke and I would talk about my current ex, he'd get jealous.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't actually want to be in a relationship with me again, he'd get jealous.
So you can sort of use your sister to your advantage in that case. I think going out on dates is a great way. How long were you thinking to stay in no contact?
Well, I had actually commented on a post on your website, and I think her name's Amore.
Yeah, Amore. She works for me. Amore gave you advice?
She recommended I do a 45-day no contact because it started getting predictable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other thing to take into account is every time you do the no contact rule over and over again, it loses effectiveness every time. Mm-hmm. And I think 45 days is good. I think really the thing with the no contact rule that everyone doesn't really do is the self-reflection and working on themselves, and as corny as it sounds, it actually does work.
I've actually been doing a lot of that, especially with this last one. With going on your website and things like that, it kind of gave me the kickstart I needed to actually start working on myself and working on actually loving myself before loving other people, because I never really did that much before. I was a very insecure teenager, and I relied on others a lot.
Everyone is insecure, though, so you're not alone there.
Yeah. But I ended up kind of like relying on other people a lot to try and fill that kind of like that emptiness that I was feeling. But recently, within like the last month, so since like the last time that he broke up with me, I've been like really working towards just trying to fill that myself and not using other people to try and fill that void. And so I've been feeling a lot happier in general and more confident, to the point where it's like, if I don't get him back, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's really the secret sauce to getting a man back too. And not a lot of people realize it, but getting to that point really puts you in a position of power. And that's my whole thing. Oftentimes when you've gotten him back, you were not in the position of power. He played you exactly like he wanted to. Let's go down the list. Number 1, you're stuck at this event with him, right? And you end up kissing, right?
Yes.
You didn't go into that thinking, I want to kiss him. He started looking at you and you started thinking, wow, he looks like he wants to kiss me.
Yes.
And one thing leads to another. We know how that goes. Part number 2, you are at an event again. He starts playing with your hair and looking through your phone. Yeah.
So, like, he was using the notepad on my phone to type me things and messages because he didn't want the rest of the group to hear.
Okay. So, he's kind of shy.
Yes, he does. He's very private with his private life. He doesn't like it being on display.
Yeah. Well, I think each time that you got back with him, it was not you from a position of power. It was him enforcing his will onto you.
Yeah,
he got the result he wanted.
Quite weak in that way.
Yeah, you weren't weak. You the actions you took are understandable. So don't beat yourself up over them. I've seen people do a lot worse than that. And the fact is, you did get him back, so it's clear the formula is there. You just need to structure it in the right way. So I think jealousy works extremely well. So I would actually definitely during the no contact go on another date with someone.
Okay, well, I'm actually going to be hanging out with a few people. Like some friends are coming up from the States again, and one of them is a guy. And I was like, well, even if like I'm not actually on a date with him seeing me hanging out with a guy that he'd actually been particularly jealous of before could kind of jog something.
Yeah. I mean, so in the States here, we just had a president elected, Donald Trump, which I'll leave my opinions out of it. But one thing he did do that was smart was he stayed relevant. So even if people were talking about him really, really poorly, people were talking about him still. And the same thing applies to your ex. You want him to think about you. And even if he's jealous, if you are training him to constantly think about you over and over, it's like you're conditioning him.
I think my sister's been kind of doing that because like a lot of their conversations with each other are about me. Even if they're negative, they're still about me.
Yeah, and it's just reinforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing. And the value for someone... I mean, the famous quote is, there's no such thing as bad press. It's true. Yeah. There's no such thing as bad press. Any press is good press. Even if someone's saying the worst things about you and it's blowing up, you're getting exposure. And this is kind of what you want. So I think staying relevant is not going to be the problem for you. Let's talk about texting now. So is this an area of strength, do you feel? Do you need some help with texting?
I think I might, because we used to text a lot, but it was mostly one-sided. He's not overly keen on texting, but I used to text a lot. Recently, I've been kind of like, I don't really care for texting as much anymore, so I think that might help. But I used to be like so adamant on him replying and be like, okay, you didn't reply for like 2 hours. Why didn't you answer me? And now I'm just like, why did I even think that way? That's crazy talk. But
okay. So let's dive into texting. So what exactly with texting do you need help on? So I'm going to kind of give the mic over to you, and you just ask me any question you want.
With the texting, I think the biggest thing I'd need help on would be to try and get him engaged and to get him to reply as much as like as much effort as I'm putting in.
Okay. All right. So I think let me ask you a question about the string of text message. Your text message thread, for example. How many text messages would it typically last before he would go cold turkey?
I'm not entirely sure. Towards the end of the relationship, it got really repetitive. It'd just be mostly like, oh, hi, how are you? How's your day? And it'd just be like really boring, repetitive conversation. But before that, sometimes we'd be talking literally like the entire day.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what you need to start doing is getting him in the habit of you ending the conversation on him.
Okay.
And that's a thing a lot of women struggle with, because as is so often with someone going through a breakup where they want their ex to talk to them, and when they finally do get that text message, it's so exciting, they just want it to last forever, they overstay the welcome a little too long, and he ends up ending the conversation. I think you need to preempt it real fast. So I would try to, if I was you, start off with like quick bursts. So you're texting him in quick little bursts and ending. Quick little burst and ending. So even if it's an engaging conversation, as long as you can continue to end the conversations, you may find he'll start to reach out more and more and more. Now, texting is... Sorry, go ahead.
So instead of it being like a full day conversation, like don't have to be talking like the entire day long, only like little bits here and there.
Maybe even a 30-minute texting exchange, and then that's it for the day.
Okay.
But the key to texting is eventually you do want to get back. So I'm assuming when you were talking the full day, that was probably when your relationship was really good.
Yes.
Okay, so that's kind of where you want to get back to. So it's like, if I could, you can see me, right? So
yes.
All right, so it's sort of like there's this gradual progression, right? So you're starting off, and I don't know if you can see, but I drew like a little line here.
Yeah, I see that.
You're starting slowly. So you're doing the quick bursts at the beginning right here. This is like so ghetto. I'm so sorry. You're doing the quick bursts at the beginning right here. And then, but as time goes on, you're letting the conversations last longer and longer and longer until eventually you hit this point where you're talking every single day. And I've talked a lot about that throughout the website. You've probably heard me say tide theory. Exactly. Same principle applies, but it's not the be all end all. The texting is not going to be the thing that enhances attractive building type things as much as seeing the person actually in person or talking on the phone.
Yeah, texting is just kind of like a leeway into things.
Yeah, and I was talking to someone a couple days ago about this idea of this value ladder. So the idea is to slowly but surely build attraction up. Very, very similar to how you're building attraction through this tide theory, where you're kind of getting progressively more intense as your texting goes on. The same thing applies overall with getting a man back. You're not going to ask someone to be your girl or your boyfriend again immediately after the no contact rule, they're going to say no. You've given them no reason to. So you need to pick your spots, but slowly build attraction up. And honestly, the more I talk to you and hear about your situation, I don't think that's going to be a problem for you. I really don't.
Okay.
I think the problem is after you get him back. If, of course, you get him back. But let's say you do. If you get him back, I think that's where your challenges will lie. But anyways, continue asking questions. This is sort of rapid fire for you.
Okay, so how exactly would you approach texting? So to be able to actually get them to reply that way.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a big believer, and I've done a lot of different tests and studies on this, and I've had people who've been broken up do the test for me. So I kind of know what works and what doesn't work. And there are 3 elements to every good text message. And if you listen, it's the knowledge of your relationship, the action phrase, and telling a story. People are hardwired for stories. And this is going to be especially true for him since he's a big manga and anime fan. He loves stories. And so if you can tell a compelling story about something that he's interested in over text message, it's going to do wonders for keeping him engaged. But like with any story, there has to be conflict and it has to be interesting. So kind of what I'm thinking for you is, so when you're texting him, you're going to have these short bursts, right? Like I've said, we're going to try to end the conversation. Well, maybe it would be really interesting if you sort of structured a story that was outlined over the course of like 10 days, where you gave him a little bit of the story every single day, or you worked a little bit in every single day. And it's just sort of my creative mind thinking for you, but I think that would work really well on him and make text messaging really, really interesting and unique to you. And the idea is to kind of get him hooked on the story, or maybe tell him, I mean, one of the greatest TV shows of all time is Seinfeld, right? You watch Seinfeld? Well, Seinfeld was a show about nothing, right? Every single episode was just a random thing. But it told its own little story. So maybe what you can do is kind of put in these little Seinfeld text messages every time you do these like little short burst thing to capture his interest, keep him interested, and end the conversation. Maybe you can kind of spread it out like that.
Then continue the story the next time?
It doesn't necessarily have to continue the next time. If you can work it out to where it works that way, I imagine that would work really, really well if it was a good story. But even if it's just a random story, like you're telling him every single time that you're talking, it can really, really be effective. It's amazing how effective it can be. But the key is the story has to be really, really good, right? Famously told a story about a woman who texted her ex about how she compared him to bear poop, right? That's not the kind of story you want to be telling. You want to be telling a story to him that he'll be interested in. And you can even continue this when you're talking to him on the phone. Like, imagine if you're talking to him, and every single time you talk to him, you have a new interesting story to tell. Something completely unique, something completely interesting, but every single time he's texting you or calling you, he's kind of anticipating you're going to have this story to tell because it's interesting and it makes him want to talk to you. So maybe if you can kind of work out something like that too, especially women, when they're in relationships for a long time, they kind of go through the motions and texting becomes kind of boring. This might be a way to spice it up. So that would be kind of my best piece of advice. I'm sorry if I just threw like 10 different things at you at once, but...
Oh, no, it's okay. I'm actually writing notes down.
Oh, good.
And another thing would be when do you think I should contact him? Because we haven't like officially spoken on like texting or anything like that since the 9th, but we have physically seen each other because of these group gatherings. Although during these group gatherings, I kind of like keep my distance from him. I talk to mostly other people. I do engage him in conversation because I don't want to be rude, but I don't particularly seek him out for conversation. I don't cling to him the way I used to.
Perfect.
There has been one kind of issue that happened because our group is kind of like very jokingly mean to each other. And my one friend will constantly compare my ex to this TV character from a show called Skins. And he always is saying, it's like, oh, he looks like Tony from Skins. I'm like, no, he doesn't look like Tony. The only resemblance he has to Tony is his personality. But Tony is kind of a bit of a jerk. So I'm kind of indirectly making a mean joke to him. But like everyone does this all the time. And I think that kind of might have put a damper on something.
I would kind of stop that if I was you.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of figuring as well.
Right. He'll be on the outside displaying, oh, ha, 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 ha. But on the inside, he's going to be like, you son of a, he's not going to be a very, that's how I would react to that.
Yeah, so I kind of stopped doing that the last 2 times that we hung out, but there was a few times before that I had done it, and then I'm assuming that it bothered him, so that's why I stopped. Because during that time frame where I'd done it before that, I was kind of like angry at him, so that's why I'd said it. But then afterwards, I'm just like, there's really no point in that. So I'm not sure if I should wait like 45 days from his birthday, which was November 27th. Which is kind of like the last time I ever said something like that, or if I should wait, or if I should text him sooner. So
what would 45 days from that date be?
From his birthday?
Yeah.
I'll have to check. 1 second.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking...
My sister just walked downstairs, my younger sister.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm just going to mute my mic for 1 second.
Okay. Well, if you're listening, the reason I'm asking is because of the holidays. And I don't... Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So I'm trying to figure out if it lands close to like New Year's or New Year's Eve. It's kind of... Usually you want to wait till a little bit after that.
Okay. There's a little bit of another thing that I kind of wanted to ask.
Yeah, go for it.
We have... with my high school group, we have this Secret Santa event every year. Now, I don't have him as my Secret Santa, so I wouldn't be giving him this gift or anything, but that's supposed to be on the 29th of December. And I was wondering if I should just not go to that event, or if I should go and just kind of be very civil to him.
I say you go, you be civil, but this is going to sound really weird because it's usually against the advice that I offer, but I say kind of be a little cold. And
okay.
The only reason I'm saying that, and my thinking behind that, is you kind of have bent head over heels for this guy, and he probably is under the impression that he can have you anytime he wants, especially if you're open to agreeing to an open relationship. What I'm thinking is maybe not rude, but cold, as in one-word responses to whenever he talks to you. At that point, he's going to be like, wait, maybe I don't have her under my fingers like I thought I did.
Okay.
So I say you go. I say you have fun. Anything related to him, just be kind of shut off a little bit. I definitely want him to understand that this is, like, you're not the same person that he's used to. And that's a good thing.
Okay. All right. So that I'll definitely do that then. And so I'll probably wait until after New Year's to send my first initial contact text to him then.
Yeah. And
we are having a party at my house, and my sister invited him, and he said he might come. He didn't say if he was coming for sure or not, but I'll just do the same thing that I would for
same
the
exact
together.
thing. I know it's a little weird with your sister being involved in everything, but it doesn't change how to act. Just make sure he knows that something is wrong, because the no contact rule is effective because of that reason. If he feels he's the problem, he's more likely to make a change.
Yeah. Okay.
So what else do you have? Because we've only got about five more minutes or so.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then after texting, what would we do after that? So it'd be the calls?
Yeah. Phone calls, Skyping works, FaceTiming works. And this is really where you ramp up the attraction. Not anywhere near the level that you can when you're actually in front of the person. But I say continue the idea of the storytelling method, the Seinfeld type method, where every time he talks to you, you need to have something interesting to put forth, something that will capture his imagination. And especially with this guy, I think it will work gangbusters in building attraction, because he's going to be associating you with, wow, she's so interesting. That's kind of what you want to have happen. I also think it's important to emphasize the changes you've made in your life. So I'm just as an example, let's say you lost like 20 pounds, which I'm not saying that at all. This is just a complete example.
Yeah.
It would be and a great way to emphasize this would be an indirect way. Just find some sort of indirect way without like kind of like bragging about yourself to emphasize the positive things you've done in your life.
Okay.
So those are some of my better tips. As far as talking on the phone, I say try to have fun, but the same principle applies where you need to end the conversation first. And anywhere, this is the most important aspect of ending the conversation first and at the high point. You always want to do it at the phone because that's where it will be most effective. Especially on the phone, it's easy to get drawn into a conversation, especially if you're telling a story or he's telling a story and it's really fascinating and you're having a good time and he's having a good time. You don't want it to end. It's really easy to get caught up. But if you're disciplined and end the conversation right when it's getting good or right at the best point of the conversation, you'll be constantly reinforcing the peak of the conversation. He'll constantly want to come back for more and more. I've seen this happen so many times. It's a little ridiculous.
All right. Okay. I think that basically covers everything.
Anything else that you can think of? You still have about 2 or 3 minutes left.
Not entirely sure. I'm just thinking about it. Do you think there'd be any way that I could actually try to get him to commit more rather than just get him back? Or do you think
commitment more? I think it's a function of looking at the interdependence theory with the investment aspect. So the more time you can get him to invest in you, the harder it will be for him to walk away. If he stays satisfied with the relationship, that will be fine. Where the red flag comes into play is this: if it's a fetish with your sister or sisters or something, it can be hard to overcome something like that, which is why I say most of your problem is in that area. If you get him back, trying to structure it to where it's a healthy relationship, I think you just need to be clear that maybe this is his last chance.
Yeah.
Right? So if he screws it up or if he's not 100% in it, then
that's it.
That's it. And you have to mean it. I mean,
yeah.
It's a last chance type thing. If that's it, that's it. You move on. You don't care about him anymore.
Exactly.
That's how I would try to approach it if I was you.
All right. Okay, that sounds good.
All right.